Good afternoon, everybody. I think we're just on time, so we'll get proceedings underway. My name is Tara McCarthy. I'm the CEO of Board B of the Irish Food Board, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here to the final of the Great Agri Food Debate. I want to thank, first of all, the teams and their mentors for the huge preparation that they've put into all of today. I sat through all of the different debates, and they were just fantastic. And it's not a surprise that over the last 5 years, these two teams have been in the final for 3 of them. So from that perspective, you can really feel the quality of the debate that is here and the professionalism almost in what they're doing. Just to get a couple of matters over, the Twitter handle, as for any of the new arrivals, is #GreatAgriFoodDebate. And moving straight into the topic. So, as you can see on the screens, global free trade, not subsidies, will deliver a sustainable future for European agriculture. So we have our 2 teams, as I said, 3 times their third face-off this particular year, UCD and WIT. The proposing the motion are the team from Waterford, and the opposing motion will be from Dublin. So the stance obviously isn't their personal views, it's the views that have been given to them as they present this particular debate. We have 4 judges, and I'd like to welcome, it's Nina Pritchard from McDonald's, the German ambassador to Ireland, Her Excellency Deiker Potzel, Pamela Byrne from the Food Safety Authority of Ireland, and Niall Brown, CEO of Dawn Meats in Dunbia. I'll introduce each of those 4 speakers when I'm looking to buy time in the course of the judging at each slot. If I can just introduce one slight change for the final. I'm not going to go through all of the rules that you're all familiar with and all of our teams have heard on numerous occasions already, but each speaker for this particular final has got a maximum of 5 minutes. And that obviously there's no minimum, but they do have that maximum 5 minutes. And obviously the bell will ring once after 1 minute, and again after 4 minutes, and 3 times then after, at 5 minutes. We also have a 4th speaker on this particular element of it, so that's another dynamic that we'll be looking to welcome as well. All of the other rules are as you've heard or as you've been listening to over the course of the morning. So without any further delay, what I'm delighted to do is to introduce from WIT to propose the motion, Daniel Mulligan.
Chairperson, judges, members of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Danielle Mulligan, and as the captain of the WIT team, it is with great honour and pride that I welcome you to the Great Agri-Food Debate Final 2020. The speakers from my team today, Ronan, Nicole, Martin and I, stand before you to passionately propose the motion that global free trade, not subsidies, will deliver a sustainable future for European agriculture. Under a free trade policy, according to the EU, it presents the ability to deliver real economic results for consumers, workers and small companies without compromising core principles such as sustainable development. The Economic Times define a subsidy as a transfer of money from the government to an entity which leads to a fall in price of the subsidised product. The Brundtland Commission states that a sustainable future is one where people can meet their needs without compromising the ability of people in the future to meet their own needs. To redefine the motion, we believe that global free trade enables the exchange of goods freely without blockages. This is what will allow European agriculture to meet its sustainable needs in the future. Subsidies will only prevent a fair price and mask failing businesses. My team is made up of land management and agricultural science students, all with one ambition and passion for the future of European agriculture. We want to be paid for our product, not subsidised to avoid sinking. The opposition might try to romanticise you today into thinking that family farms need subsidies to survive. Well, Valentine's Day is long and truly past, and I urge you to listen to my team members as we provide you with all the proof you need to uphold this motion. Ronan will speak to you about the disadvantages of subsidies, discussing how they have led to an overproduction in the past, how they are inhibiting new technologies of the future, such as vertical farming. Nicole will speak to you about free trade, why it is the way forward, how free trade has worked in the past, how it is working now with a proven surge in markets with free trade partnerships have been formed, and how it will work in the future in relation to environmental sustainability and a broader spectrum of innovation. Martin will outline how he has seen firsthand that subsidies are not working on farms. He will walk you through the inefficiencies of the beef industry in Ireland and the social impact it has had. He will tell you how with global free trade, an increase in growth, improved efficiency will deliver the sustainable agriculture we all crave. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think of an old milking stool, it has 3 legs, just as a sustainable future has 3 legs: economic, environmental and social. A subsidy is only the duct tape masking the cracks in the wood. Our message is simple. If you need a subsidy to make something sustainable, then it is not sustainable. I know I prefer to sit on our stool than the one of the opposition, which is made of false hope and ready to collapse. Thank you.
So Daniel, thank you for that powerful opening. So I'm going to give the judges a couple of moments there to do their scoring, and during that I'm going to introduce each judge during each of those intervals. So let me start with Nina Pritchard, who's the Head of Sustainable and Ethical Sourcing in McDonald's UK and Ireland. Nina is the Head of Sustainable, so basically her role is involving overseeing the whole sustainability agenda throughout their business, and that's with the focus of agriculture, environment and sustainable sourcing of food and packaging, which contributes to the annual supply chain spending in excess of €1 billion a year. Nina's also been with McDonald's in the business since 2011, and previously she had the position of Agriculture Manager, delivering on the long-term programme of Farm Forward, and Purchasing Manager, responsible for the procurement of food and paper, as well as building long-term partnerships with suppliers. And Nina is currently the Professional Advisor for the Harper Adams University, and previously worked for the Welsh Government as a Senior Researcher and Developer Advisor. Now, judges, can I take it that your judging is complete? Fantastic. Let me now introduce the first speaker from UCD on the opposing team, Una Sinnott.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, adjudicators, members of the proposition, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Una Sinnott and I stand before you as the proud captain of the UCD debating team. My teammates and I are here to passionately oppose the motion global free trade, not subsidies, will deliver a sustainable future for European agriculture. Now, I come from a family farm in County Wexford that is the backbone of my local community. Like many of us here, I was blessed with a farming upbringing. Danielle only spoke about the past. I want to look at the future, ladies and gentlemen. I want a future where family farms are not a thing of the past, where rural communities can field GAA teams, and where our children are not deprived of the brilliant childhood we all shared. Now, the word sustainable is at the crux of today's motion, and the definition of sustainable is to meet the needs of the present without compromising on the needs of the future. That is regards the economy, one second, let me finish this definition, the economy, the environment and society. Ladies and gentlemen, that's planet, profit and people, and we will base our arguments around that here today. Yes, Danielle?
You said that we only spoke of the past, we actually spoke of the future.
Well, I'm sure, Danielle, that your team's arguments will give us lots of points of information about the past failure of subsidies. But ladies and gentlemen, that is legislation failures. The correct implementation of a subsidy would deliver a sustainable future for European agriculture, and our speaker, Tommy Mead, will deal with that in particular. Now, the definition of global free trade by Harvard University is a system whereby there's a free flow of goods, capital and labour across all nations. And there is a difference between the definition of global free trade and a free trade agreement definition, and I will get to that. Now, the International Monetary Fund states that global free trade allows a foreign company to operate as easily and efficiently as a domestic company in its area. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you all, how on earth would enabling the likes of Cargill in the United States enable them to operate as efficiently and as easily as John Meats do in Europe? How on earth would that help our European future and to have a sustainable future? It would only benefit countries outside of Europe. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the World Trade Organization defines a subsidy as a government incentive in the form of financial aid or support to promote economic, social or environmental policy. And I want to ask you all another question. How on earth could the correct implementation of market intervention for the good of people on the ground level not deliver a sustainable future for European agriculture? Now, the only future we deliver, ladies and gentlemen, if we carry today's motion, is the future economic growth of countries outside of Europe. Now, on that note, I want to remind you of the 3 pillars of sustainability. That is the environment, the economy and society. On that note, I want to introduce you to my incredible teammates. First off, we have Simon Planet Lanigan. Simon will focus on the environmental pillar of sustainability, and he will show you all how market intervention is needed in order for us to keep the environmental standards we pride ourselves in. Our third speaker, and now please excuse me for the pun, is Owen Profit Cashman. Owen is going to deal directly with how putting European agriculture on the global marketplace is a risk we simply cannot afford to take. Now, our fourth speaker, and a man of the people, is Tommy People Mead. Tommy is going to show you all how rural communities would be destroyed if global free trade was implemented. Now, the lead speaker, Danielle, of the proposition, has given us a definition of free trade agreements. Global free trade is a different thing. A free trade agreement is a wonderful thing, and it can be welcomed in Europe, because a free trade agreement, ladies and gentlemen, is negotiated on our own terms. We can put down limits and negotiate with other countries and create trade partners. And that is what we have right now. We have a happy medium between trade partners and subsidies. Ladies and gentlemen, we have over 100 trade agreements at the moment in Europe, either implemented or about to be updated. These free trade agreements are a fantastic thing. They allow us to protect animal welfare and protect our environmental standards, and they allow us to protect special products that come from certain origins, such as Roquefort cheese, Parma ham, and your beloved blah if you're planning on exporting it anytime soon. Ladies and gentlemen, we would lose our identity if we carry today's motion. Lose our identity as natural... Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Una. I'll let the judges to do their judging for this moment and use that opportunity now to introduce you to Ambassador Deike Potze, who was appointed the German ambassador to Ireland in 2017. She's a very experienced diplomat, having served in the Foreign Ministry in Bonn from 1995 to 1997, and thereafter in Singapore as the Press and Political Attaché, in Tehran as Head of Cultural Press and Science Section, and thereafter in Berlin in various positions in the Foreign Ministry, including the Desk Office for EU Enlargement, Deputy Head of Division for Personnel and Staff Development, and from 2012 to 2014 she was the Head of the Personal Office of the Federal President, and before coming to Dublin was Deputy Director General for the Central Services of the Foreign Ministry in Berlin. So the Ambassador has studied English and French language and literature at Humboldt University in Berlin, and from 1993 to 1995 was a student of the Foreign Service Academy of the Federal Foreign Ministry, which is located in Bonn. So clearly a very well-established ambassador for us. Can I take it the judging is done? Fantastic. Let me now pass you over to the opposing team, Simon Lanigan.
Good morning all. My name is Simon Lanigan and I'm a second-year animal science student honoured to be representing UCD here today in the final of the Great Agri-Food Debate. To reiterate what our captain, Una Sinnott, has stated, we are strongly opposing this motion. and today I will be focusing on the environmental impact of global free trade. Now, UNA's definition of the subsidy mentioned that it has the aim of promoting environmental policy through financial aid and support. However, her definition of global free trade from Harvard stated that it was a system of goods, capital and labour flowing freely between the nations. Let me strongly state my point here. Global free trade does not include nor incorporate the care and protection of our environment. Now, Professor Nigel Scollin got up and spoke at our dinner banquet last night and mentioned a fascinating point on the health of our society, but most importantly, our planet and air health. He mentioned how it is a privilege to be working in the agriculture and food sector, and we couldn't agree more with him. We here in Ireland pride ourselves on our environment, our biodiversity, and our lush green landscapes that we market our produce off. The proposition here this evening are going to imply throughout their speeches how we need global free trade for profitability, competitiveness and survival in world markets, and this was clearly evident in Danielle's opening speech. It is clear that once again the environment is going to be on the backbone for our strive for greed, money and status. Now, the EU Department of Agriculture released a statement that stated a healthy environment and nature protection needs farmers' engagement. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we need to work with farmers and with the correct implementation of subsidies in order to protect our environment. And this, and only this, will lead to a sustainable future for European agriculture. Now, Martin, I believe, is going to mention how subsidies aren't going to be working. We acknowledge we can do more and implement subsidies more efficiently, but we do have some great schemes out there that lead to a sustainable system of farming that incorporates the environment while benefiting the farmer financially. These benefits can be seen through environmental schemes such as GLOS. GLOS is the green, low-carbon, agri-environmental scheme that promotes biodiversity, protects water quality and combats climate change.
Point of information.
Yeah.
GLOS is a grant, not a subsidy, so it's irrelevant to this conversation.
It's all under the EU global picture and does fall under the category. Now, increasing population and intensification will cause habitat and species, while increasing our greenhouse gases, unless it is managed accordingly. And schemes such as GLOS help to combat this. And another beneficial subsidy is that of the implementation of low-emission slurry spreaders. Research conducted by Teagasc stated that the ammonia release from slurry was 58% lower using a low-emission dribble bar or slurry injector than that of the conventional old-school splash plate. And thanks to subsidies, farmers are able to retrieve 40% of the initial cost.
Point of information, that's a grant, not a subsidy. A subsidy is to what they're producing. Or
it's all coming under CAP, which is the subsidy. It is. Now, if we look at New Zealand, which has a system of global free trade, a report published in 2019 from the Ministry of the Environment in New Zealand stated that since global free trade began, they've seen a 70% increase in the dairy herd, causing huge increases in greenhouse gases. 90% of the wetlands have been drained and turned into pasture, a loss of 70,000 hectares of native vegetation, and 86 species of plants and animals have been marked for species extinction. And on top of this, a scientific journal report published that dairy farms in New Zealand use colossal amounts of water, equivalent to the water usage of 60 million people for the irrigation of land. Now, some of you might not see the relevance of this. However, according to EU figures, in Italy, 32.9% of agricultural land was irrigated, and there are similar figures for Spain, Portugal and Greece. And these figures will only increase if we go into global free trade agreements. The fact of the matter is, we can't compete against the world in global free trade agreements, but we can market our produce with a positive environmental image that is quality assured, meanwhile protecting, enhancing and flourishing our environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Let me now take the opportunity, as the judges do their scoring, to introduce you to Pamela Byrne, who's the head of the Food Safety Authority here in Ireland. And as I read through this, you'll understand my humility will be just increasing. So Pamela holds a PhD in environmental toxicology from UCC, University College Cork, an MSc in aquatic resource management from King's College and the University of London, a BSc in zoology from UCC, and a higher diploma in environmental law from the University of Aberystwyth in Wales. So Dr. Byrne is the chair of the management board of the Joint Programme Initiative, A Healthy Diet for a Healthy Life, for the last 5 years. And she's also the chair of the Strategic Advisory Board for the Institute of Food and Health at University College Dublin, Ireland. And as well as she currently chairs the board of the Association of Chief Executives of State Agencies in Ireland as well. So a very highly qualified individual for the role. Judges, have you finished your scoring? Thank you very much. So let me bring the argument back now to our proposing team, Ronan O'Keefe.
Ladies and gentlemen, judges, chairperson, members of the opposition, I am here today to second the motion that global free trade, not subsidies, will deliver a sustainable future for European agriculture. The EU is set to spend an estimated €63 billion on its common agriculture policy by the end of 2020. To present a clearer picture of the costs, EU agricultural subsidies in 2018 accounted for 37% of the EU's total budgetary spend, despite its recipients representing only 5.4% of the population and a mere 1.6% of the GDP. Here it becomes clear there are deficiencies in the system, not to mention that loss-making farm practices are sustained by these artificial means and areas in need of improvement made more difficult to detect. This eliminates any incentive to invest in new technologies such as vertical farming or waterless crops. Innovation is essential for the sustainable future of agriculture, and subsidies by their nature can inhibit innovation. Subsidies did play an important role in supporting EU agriculture over the last number of years. This policy, however, was never sustainable and certainly is not the answer in terms of the future. Changing the system and opting instead for a free market economy would create a more realistic picture of where farming stands and make clear where changes must be made. The opposition have highlighted, or will highlight, instances of hardship in the farming community, as indeed there are many. But the solution is not to simply crush the most immediate concerns and overlook the underlying issues. With subsidies in place, the regime will favour the wealthy and mature markets, while smaller operations will be starved of the opportunities they're due. For example, New Zealand is a country of 4.6 million people without much of a domestic product for milk, meat or wool. However, New Zealand people produce enough food for 40 million people and export 90% of its produce. No, thank you. Facing a budget crisis in the 80s, New Zealand government cut agricultural subsidies and export incentives. Today, New Zealand farmers are some of the world's most productive and innovative. Removing government assistance completely, no thank you, it freed farmers to produce what people really want and to do so in an efficient way that could turn a profit. Since the reforms, New Zealand farmers have cut costs, diversified their land use and developed new products, and we can succeed where New Zealand have failed in their environmental issues. The reality is that demand for food in the world, particularly high quality food we can produce, is growing like never before. We have a responsibility to see if we can encourage production of food as efficiently as possible. Back in the EU, Brussels protectionism seems to explicitly favour big businesses over small and medium-sized farmers. The Henrik Ball Foundation, a German research institute, found that between 2003 and 2013, over 25% of farms in Europe went out of business, and no surprise, it was small farms that vanished while bigger corporations got bigger. These are not even necessarily farmers who receive these subsidies, but include companies like Tate & Lyle, Nestle and Sudzucker. These are all multi-billion euro companies who annually receive multi-million euro cap payments. Perhaps even more surprising, the royal family in the UK previously got £1 million a year in cap subsidies. But it gets worse, as has been well documented, subsidising farms that had otherwise gone out of business inevitably leads to oversupply. In the early stages of CAP, this was perfectly depicted by the Butter Mountains. Today, the Butter Mountains have been replaced by the less visible byproducts of overproduction. Excess European farm products, from milk to wheat, is sold to African countries for an extremely low price, only made possible by these subsidies. The prices are often so low that it makes it impossible for African farmers to compete, driving those very farmers out of business and destroying their already meagre incomes. This system is broken, and more importantly, it is not sustainable. A policy of continued subsidies hurts consumers and taxpayers. It puts small farmers in complete dependence of government welfare, as they still lose out against their dominant competitors who are themselves propped up by these subsidies. It hurts farmers in developing countries who are unable to compete with these subsidised goods that are dumped on their countries, reducing their ability to partake in free trade. It has led to the EU's agricultural policy to take on a life of its own. Free trade is the only option for a sustainable future for farming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronan. And again, as the judges get on with their work, let me introduce finally the Judge Niall Brown. Now, I know we spoke this morning about diversity, equality in the food industry, and I guess when I look at the profile of our judging panel today, Niall is truly blessed among women, having being the male representative for us. So Niall joined Dole Meats in their graduate management programme after university, and he progressed through the organisation, working in 5 different sites between Ireland and the UK, gaining experience in production, livestock, procurement and marketing. He was appointed the Chief Executive back in 2007 at the age of just 34, and in 2015 Dawn invested in Olivia, France's second largest beef producer, and now was appointed to their board. And Olivia has an additional €1 billion in revenue and 3,000 employees. In October 2017, Dawn Meats then merged the UK business with Dungannon-based Dunbia and acquired their facilities in Ireland. And throughout his career, Niall has focused on the culture of the company and developing the skills and capability of the management team to facilitate the successful expansion and growth of Dawn Meats. Now, can I ask the judges complete? Thank you very much. Let me now introduce again from the opposing UCD team, Owen Cashman.
Thank you, Tara. Ladies and gentlemen, adjudicators, members of the proposition, just before I begin my main speech, I want to address a few issues outlined by Ronan there. You talked a lot about New Zealand and I suppose how you were assuming that they've thrived under global free trade. New Zealand produces 3% of the world's milk and they export to China the majority of that product in terms of infant formula, which we do compete on that market with them. What happens if China say no in the morning? When China say no in the morning, their market is virtually gone. And there are no subsidies then to uphold their market, as you said, because they have a low population. So therefore, those arguments are playing to a very high-risk system that global free trade does leave you vulnerable to. So, to get into the main body of my speech, my name is Owen Cashman, and it's great to be here in the final and to have an extra minute in this debate to try and hold your attention for. So, as Una outlined, I suppose when examining the 3 aspects of sustainability, economic always has to be considered along the lines of the primary factor on the list, and there is a reason for this. To be able to implement sustainable practices, we need things to be financially viable from farm to fork. And as Simon has shown, and as Tommy will show, social and environmental sustainability comes at a cost. And unlike the proposition, we cannot say that letting Europe's farmers bear the brunt of these costs is fair or sustainable. So what happens if we don't support these farmers? Firstly, they will be forced to adapt to market conditions. They will stop bearing the brunt of environmental and social sustainability in the way they produce their food. They will switch to a low-cost system of food production to ensure economic viability, not sustainability. And who could blame them? Global free trade will result in the externalities of environmental and social costs of food production to be ignored. Thousands of small family farms that produce their food under regulation do so viably via the subsidies they receive. While subsidies do need reshaping, and we have acknowledged that, their very existence does benefit farmers and European citizens alike. Never in history has mankind been so reliant on so few to feed so many. Subsidies keeping farmers in the game allows them to maintain food production standards that the consumers want, while allowing these very consumers the opportunity to live their lives and pursue whatever careers they want. Subsidies need to be viewed as an insurance policy, as peace of mind for consumers that the food they eat is being produced sustainably by trustworthy sources, while looking after the externalities that the economics of global free trade would ignore. A subsidy's function is to increase the production of a product or service, What we must remember is that farmers produce more than just food as a product. They provide us all with hundreds of services in the work they do, from social to environmental ones, some that we are so used to, we simply ignore, like the proposition has done, advocating for free trade. Now, what the proposition have failed to realise is that European subsidies are not just subsidies on farmers' income. They are subsidy on food production as a system, bringing cheap, affordable food to the consumer while meeting vigorous safety standards and ecosystem services. I want to challenge the proposition to tell me of a food production system that brings all the extra environmental and social services to their farms and landscapes as successfully as the EU subsidies do. Now, you talked a lot about the costs of the CAP costs and the costs of our subsidies costs to the people in the EU. So let's actually break down the economics of what they do to our food. Latest reports done by the Irish Farmers Journal say that for €2.60 a week, all the social and environmental costs like habitat culture, local speciality foods like the proposition's Waterford Blah, as Una mentioned, are looked after. So let's take that €2.60 away. That's €2.60 a week. That's the price of a cup of coffee. You want to take that away. We will have bigger farms, less farm families, a wiped out agri-food sector in Ireland in particular. That would probably result in 10,000 large-scale dairy farms and the rest of the marginalised land that's being supported by subsidies to be turned into forestry. Who wants that? So as Europeans here today, are we saying that saving the price of a cup of coffee per week is worth an incredibly unstable and unsustainable food future for all of us? I would really like to hope not. People, such as the proposition, believe we are food secure. This cannot be further from the truth. The proposition argument is failing to know a good thing when they have it. We, as the opposition, are acknowledging a good thing, while hoping that with reform, EU subsidies and legislation can lead to a great thing. We have to support our agri-food sector in leading our food production to a sustainable future for EU agriculture. I strongly urge you to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. And now that I've run out of judges to introduce you to, I'm going to just hope the judges work faster for me and get the marking done before we move on. I will as well obviously give fair warning to everybody, because I will be including you all in the debate at the end, as was done in each of the preceding debates. So if you could start warming up your proposals opposing or with me. And I think we'll probably go through each of the debates that we had this morning, because we have touched on so many of the real issues our industry is facing. So I would love to hear so many of your opinions on that. So the judges, you're looking at me? Fantastic. Okay, can I introduce again from the proposing team, Nicole Cuhan McCarthy.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, chairperson, judges and members of the opposition. If I was to ask my opposition their opinion on the Scandinavian Vikings, they would inevitably regale me with tales of a burly man or woman standing poised on a dragon-like ship with horns protruding from their helmet, ready for battle. However, when I think of these people, I can appreciate the intricate, complex and open trading network with which they built throughout Europe, Asia and the Far East. I like to believe that we can all understand and appreciate these open trading networks, which have been fostered and further developed in a thankfully more peaceful way. However, my opposition gives me false hope on this, as it is clear they undervalue the importance that global free trade has to our sector's sustainability. 2018, beef exports to free trade agreement partners increased by 20%, 160,000 tonnes, equating to 2/3 of total EU beef exports. Also, in 2018, there was a 128% growth in EU sugar exports to Egypt, 510,000 tonnes.
Point of information?
Yeah.
Benefits of free trade agreements are not benefits of global trade, free trade. They are not the same thing. We negotiated those terms in our own terms, and that's why they're so successful.
Thank you, but these they can be filtered through. I don't see why they can't be beneficial to both sides, but thank you. These free trade agreement statistics are proof of the power that global free trade has to develop our great nations and great continents' sustainable future in agriculture. And these figures are regardless of the unsustainable subsidies being paid to farmers, as I will discuss in a moment. The opposition has failed to mention World Trade Organization rules who govern free trade agreements. They have banned subsidies for export markets because these subsidies were and are unsustainable. Export subsidies put downward pressure on already low market prices, and they were completely unfair on our agricultural brothers and sisters in these developing parts of the world who simply could not compete. No, thank you. I would like to place emphasis on the environment, one of the 3 pillars of sustainability, or should I say, one of the 3 legs of the milking stool. Our surrounding environment is the origin of us, the origin of what feeds us, and it will not be damaged by world free trade. At the EU conference on the future sustainability of EU trade agreements, 2 studies were examined in regards to the impact of environmental provisions on free trade agreements on pollution. Both papers found that countries engaged in free trade agreements have lower levels of pollution as measured by carbon emissions. Why? Because subsidies lead to unsustainable farming practices. It inhibits innovation. And we all know that innovation is a key player in any sustainable industry. In stark contrast to this, global free trade is a nurturer of innovation. If you can obtain the best of products quickly, easily, and at a reasonable price, then you have better access to foreign markets. You increase your profit and your knowledge, therefore facilitating innovation. There are too many farmers being paid or being handed out subsidies year in and year out, regardless of their performance, and they have become too comfortable. The opposition have mentioned poverty of the farmer and how they need help. However, I disagree with this opposition's cry of poverty and cry of help for the farmer. Ladies and gentlemen, why would I give someone a fish to feed him or herself for one day? Call it a subsidy, if you will. When I could teach that farmer to fish, and he or she could feed themselves and their neighbours for a lifetime. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and I strongly urge you to uphold the motion being proposed here today.
Thank you, Nicole. So obviously the debates are starting to round up at this stage with some clear lines being drawn in the sand as we look to understand where next. Judging complete? Fantastic. Can I then ask for the final speaker from UCD on the opposing team, Thomas Mead.
Ladies, gentlemen and adjudicators, my name is, well, Tommy Mead, I suppose, for friends like ye. I'm here and I strongly oppose the motion that global free trade, not subsidies, will deliver a sustainable future for European agriculture. I will outline the 3rd pillar of people, mentioned by you now, that the UN General Assembly has labelled as a priority area in order to achieve sustainability. That is the area of social sustainability, creating jobs and job enhancement, along with looking after indigenous communities and protecting human rights. You know, surprisingly, I'd like to agree with, well, something the opposition said, I don't know about the rest, but, you know, we receive a lot of subsidies in agriculture, and yeah, some of these aren't, there's not perfections. You know, we're not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. But, you know, perhaps that's the reason CAP reform has been delayed, to give time to iron out these imperfections, to offer farmers the sustainable future that they deserve. But does this mean we should dive blindly into the proposition's dark pit, losing all logical reason? Of course not. You know, the proposition haven't said that subsidies don't work full stop. Why? It's because they can't. You know, instead they try to scaremonger us into thinking, gee, we must scrap all subsidies because of current or past performance. Gee, we're even talking about Vikings or something like. You know, but what the proposition are talking about is mismanaged subsidies, you know, which is a legislative issue, not the subsidy themselves. And I don't see the word legislative anywhere up there today. You could have a look, I don't. You know, perhaps the reason for this is down to the Lisbon Treaty in 2009, which we in the Republic voted on not once but twice. You know, perhaps this is the reason for these mismanaged subsidies, as they're now negotiated by Ministers for Agriculture and MEPs whose primary focus is re-election and no longer just the Agricultural Commissioner. But the proposition have you believe that this is today's motion, which simply is not true. You know, trade is great. You know, as part of the EU, we have made trade deals with countries we feel, you know, can add value, but most importantly, countries we can trust. But the proposition are being naive. They don't want us to trust quarter. They don't even want us to trust half. They want us to trust every country in the world. They want us to open our borders up to 195 countries with different governments, with different laws, and with different ethics. Well, forgive me for thinking there's a flaw there. With great social issues and human rights issues, you know, your argument doesn't even address, let alone trying to help. You know, it's ridiculous. And if I ask, who do you trust? Whether it's global leaders or the person sitting next to you, maybe you want to have a good look at them. But each person in this room, you trust everyone. You know, we might like that, but can we? Is that sustainable? You know, before we open our doors to someone, we must trust them. And before we open our borders to everyone, before money, we must trust them. You know, ask ourselves, do you trust we can remain sustainable as we compete against countries that produce food while destroying loads and environmental damage, while we must protect our indigenous communities? And if not, you must oppose this motion. Do you believe we can remain sustainable as we compete against countries that use slave workers and prison workers to produce food, while we must protect our jobs and create job enhancement and look after our human rights? If not, you must oppose this motion. I'll get you the third time. Do you trust we can remain sustainable as we compete against countries that produce food while amounts of deforestation is unbelievable, while we must protect our rural development? If you don't, if there's any doubt in your body, you must, come on, oppose this motion. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, European agriculture will continue to change and develop, as it has done so for generations. We will meet many unknown challenges that need addressing, like doors that need opening. Our key for these doors is subsidies. Ever progressive, ever evolving subsidies. You decide today. Do you want to throw that key away? Or do you want to mind it and nurture it? And perhaps one day, when you're lost and you're trapped, that key will unlock a door to a bright and sustainable future. But first, you must oppose this motion. Gee, I was getting it up, people. Thank you.
I feel I should learn some moves there. Thank you, Tommy. So, as we move to the final speaker from the WI team, to introduce their wrapping up arguments, have I got the judges complete? So can I introduce Martin Busang as the final speaker before the captains will come back again. Martin.
Chairperson, timekeepers, members of the opposition, judges, ladies and gentlemen. It saddens me listening to the members of the opposition on the poor grasp of reality they seem to have to show on this motion. I look out into the audience and I see my fellow people in agriculture that have the same passion for a sustainable future for European agriculture as we have. Subsidies, by their nature, are finite and restrictive, and to define this means imposing on someone's freedom and activities, while the term sustainable suggests long-term future and impact. Therefore, subsidies, by their nature, will not deliver a sustainable future for European agriculture. The members of the opposition have come here today telling us about a fairy tale story. I'll be expecting Una's closing speech to begin with Once Upon a Time. I, ladies and gentlemen, am a proud beef farmer hailing from the sunny south coast of East Cork, and I know from first-hand experience that subsidies are not working on farms. From 1996 to the present year, according to the National Farm Survey, which is published by Chagas, shows that subsidies for beef farmers are acting as a scaffolding to the economic viability of these farms. It even goes so far to state that some of these farms are using their subsidies for the running of the farm.
Those of you farmers and those ones that are saying are popped up by subsidies feed 30 million Europeans. Please look at this as a whole food production chain, not just farmers alone.
Yeah, well, we can feed them too on without using subsidies. 35% of farmers in Ireland are receiving an income of under €10,000. Now I ask you members of the opposition, how is this a sustainable future for European agriculture? We most certainly cannot see it through subsidies. If you need a subsidy to keep a business or an industry running, then it has no future and is certainly not sustainable. Global free trade is the solution, as it allows for more growth, greater efficiencies, and promotes innovation and fairness. Free trade frees up resources to create jobs, boosting wages and overall living standards. No one wants to see the scenes of the past few months of our beef farmers marching and picketing to get a fair price for their produce. Global free trade will deliver this. We don't want these handouts or so-called subsidies that the members of the opposition refer them to keep our businesses running. This has not and will not ever deliver a sustainable future for European agriculture. Jason Clay, the director of the World Wildlife Fund, wrote in The Guardian, "Subsidies should be applied to change behaviour and solve specific problems, rather than serve as a long-term crutch to producers. If not, it will stifle innovation and make producers both less competitive and more dependent on government. Subsidies lead to inefficiencies, as many people build a business model that gain off most of gaining out of these subsidies. You're worried about filling J teams. Well, many older farmers are living off these subsidies coming from the European Union, and by meeting certain criteria and denying young farmers opportunities. Why have 100 cattle on 100 acres when 5 sheep fulfill the criteria? Young, enthusiastic farmers have the education, the technology and the drive to gain the most out of the resources given to them and make a sustainable industry. Members of the opposition, are you going to deny young farmers these opportunities? Tommy, you mentioned that the CAP has been delayed because they're worried about how to do it. Well, the reason it has been delayed is Brexit has left. So the budget is down €75 billion. So there will be a cut in CAP, demonstrating subsidies are not sustainable. We need to source these new markets. The members of the opposition have also failed to mention the pig producers. They do not receive any subsidies coming from the European Union and are being renowned for being the most efficient of all agricultural enterprises, which proves the point. Subsidies lead to inefficiencies, which is not sustainable. The growing rhetoric about imposing tariffs and limiting freedom to trade internationally reflects a resurgence of old arguments that stay alive in large part because the benefits of free trade are often hard and diffuse to see. My grandfather once told me, a simple lie is easier to take than a complex truth. Now, ladies and gentlemen, can you see the complex truth? I urge you to uphold this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I think one of the key insights that we've heard in the course of the day is what wise grandparents are around the place in general. So, if we'll take it that the judges have again swiftly completed their calculations there, we've now heard from each of the teams, their 4 speakers, and we're now going to ask each of the team captains to now wrap up and make their summations. So I'll pass first of all to Una from the UCD opposing this.
Hello everyone once again. Martin, I'm very sorry now to disappoint you, but I don't have time to give you a fairy tale story here today. I'm far too busy. The proposition here, ladies and gentlemen, have told us absolutely nothing, only that global free trade is the best possible thing that can happen to the global economy. It may be the best thing that can happen to the global economy, but ladies and gentlemen, that means it's the worst thing that can happen to your hometown. the worst thing that can happen to our animal welfare standards and the worst thing that can happen to our environmental standards and our biodiversity. Ladies and gentlemen, if we carry today's motion, we welcome the future demise of sustainable European agriculture, and my team and I have detailed that to you very clearly. A very worrying question and point of information from the proposition at the very beginning of this debate was that they questioned whether a grant was a subsidy. Well, in the context of today's motion, it refers to global free trade. Global free trade implies that no benefit is given to the domestic producer of a good. A grant is a benefit to a domestic producer of a good. Therefore, a grant could not exist in a world of global free trade. And it's worrying that we were asked that not once, but twice. Now, when I say not once, but twice, it makes me think of the treaty we all agreed on years ago, the Lisbon Treaty. We voted on that in Ireland, not once, but twice. And that explains a lot of the confusion that the proposition here has today about the correct or incorrect implementation of market interventions and subsidies. Ladies and gentlemen, in particular, Ronan focused on how inefficient subsidies are, bringing up the royal family. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where I bring in the Lisbon Treaty, because we handed over our power to make decisions on subsidies to the politicians. Now, they do a very good job a lot of the time, but this is where I clarify your confusion over why subsidies may be sometimes inefficient, and the future will hold more future with efficient subsidies and implementations on the ground level. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you about sustainability and the word that it means. It is to meet the needs of the present without compromising on the needs of the future. And those three pillars of the environment, the economy and society that our three teammates here and speakers have told you all about. To deliver a sustainable environmental future for European agriculture, Simon here detailed to us how subsidies are needed to keep the environmental standards that we pride ourselves in. Ronan, you referred to New Zealand and said, oh, well, we're just not going to do what they did and we're just going to keep our environmental standards. That will by no means happen, and it's absolutely ridiculous for you to think that that's just going to happen without market intervention. Ladies and gentlemen, to deliver a sustainable economic future, we need to focus on what Owen Cashman here told us about. Global free trade leads to a race to the bottom, and it will provide a reason to get rid of local markets, depleting our rural communities, and the price that we pay for CAP is a price on the priceless. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to deliver a sustainable societal future, we had Tommy Mead discuss how rural communities need that market intervention to thrive. Rural communities across Europe may as well be referred to as the Museum of European Agriculture if we are to forget about subsidies here today. Now, Martin, you referred to pig farmers also. Pig farmers, ladies and gentlemen, cannot be treated in the same context as beef farmers, and fair play to them for being so efficient. But a beef setup is outdoors, and your pig setup that you're referring to is indoors. The CAP efficiency that we give subsidies to beef farmers, it has the extra societal benefits, such as agri-tourism, maintaining our landscape. We are the natural custodians of our land. And if we get rid of subsidies, we will automatically become the natural destroyers of our land. So that deals with your question about the pig industry. Ladies and gentlemen, Mahatma Gandhi once said, the future depends on what we do in the present. Now we, ladies and gentlemen, have the future of sustainable agriculture in Europe in our hands. And the future depends on what we do in the present. We cannot carry a motion that Simon, Owen and Tommy has showed us will lead to the future demise of European agriculture. Sustainable means to meet the needs of the present without compromising the needs of the future. Ladies and gentlemen, we compromise absolutely everything right here, right now, if we sit here and listen to the proposition tell us to carry today's motion. We must defeat. Thank you.
Thank you, Una, for a very strong wrap-up of your team's perspective. I'll give the judges a very short time to put those final scores down before I introduce Danielle for her opportunity to wrap up for WIT and giving their final wrap-up for the proposing team. We're good? Danielle, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, once again. Just to come back to some points that your team has pointed out. Own profit cashman. I mentioned earlier that my team is made up of land management and agricultural science students, one of which is a land management and forestry student. So I'm sure he would not appreciate you not wanting to plant trees. Tommy People Mead, if you don't want to open the markets to other countries, then why are you called Tommy People Mead? Like, why don't you want to open markets? I would prefer an increase in price if it was me. The opposition have given you the usual propaganda regarding subsidies, which we are all too familiar with. They've stated that with subsidies the small farmer would disappear. Well, my teammates have outlined that global free trade would drive farmers to diversify, becoming more efficient in their practices, allowing them to become sustainable both financially and environmentally. We've also heard the opposition mention price stability, how most farmers are operating at a loss with the subsidy allowing them to continue. But how could you, as young agricultural enthusiasts, want a future where you're getting handouts instead of achieving profitable business? It's disgraceful that you as proud farmers would let your dignity be tarnished by being underpaid and handed a sum of money to keep you afloat. It can often be said that old habits die hard. This is certainly true for this debate regarding global free trade, subsidies, and which is even better for sustainability. All too often, trade and sustainability are seen as foes rather than friends. But this view is wrong and dated. There is now, as my teammates have told you, a long history of countries improving sustainability under free trade agreements with little or no subsidies. I spoke earlier about the three legs of sustainability: economic, social and environmental. My teammates have outlined how global free trade will support a sustainable future for European agriculture. Ronan mentioned the hardships farmers face, currently being supported by subsidies, slashing the financial and social sustainability of agriculture. He outlined how these subsidies are inhibiting new technologies which could improve environmental sustainability of farming. Nicole gave us figures proving that with global free trade follows a massive surge of exports of our produce, leading to economic sustainability. She also mentioned how it has been proven that countries under free trade agreements have lower levels of carbon emissions, leading to environmental sustainability. Martin proved that every point the opposition have made goes against the three legs of sustainability. He outlined how the age demographic of the agricultural community, due to subsidies, presents a blockade for young, enthusiastic farmers, ones like we see here before us, who are equipped at creating a sustainable future for agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a young farmer, and it was only the other night when I was out calving a cow that I thought to myself, what is it all about? We work hard day and night to produce a premium, safe, high-quality product for the consumer. Yet we are underpaid for the high standards of work we produce. It was then I realised that this motion presents us with an opportunity to create a sustainable future, which has three sturdy legs: economic, environmental and social, all supported by the bolt of our industry, which is global free trade. Ladies and gentlemen, whether you're a small beef farmer in the glens of Antrim or a floating dairy farmer off in the Netherlands, the passion and the pride for this industry runs through every vein of every farmer in the European Union. We all want the same thing: a sustainable future. And it is global free trade, not subsidies, which will deliver that. Uphold the motion, and remember, if you need a subsidy to make something sustainable, then it is certainly not sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle, for a very powerful wrapping up there. So I'm going to ask the judges to very quickly rush off now and get the final judging done, the numbers tallied and the best speakers, best teams identified, and to very clearly come back here quickly. So while the judges go, I wanted just again to say a fantastic congratulations to the two teams that I'm accompanied by and by each of those individual speakers. From Danielle, Una, Ronan, Simon, Nicole, Owen, Martin and Tommy, I think they all deserve a fantastic round of applause for their work. And that's not to say a well done to the full teams and their mentors and all of the support that's behind them as well. I guess the topic I found was absolutely fascinating, and how they articulated it, both teams today, was fantastic. I did not expect to be moving between Grannies, Mahatma Gandhi, Jason Clay and the GAA in the one conversation, but it was brilliant. And you could see that tour de force of insight, of research, of passion, of intellect that was displayed to here today, which gives you huge pride and confidence in the interest that's in our industry, in the passion that's in our industry, and in the intellectual power that's in the future of our industry as well. And I think this topic is a fascinating one because it's complex. And I think you addressed so much of the complexity of it today, be it the hidden subsidies, the definition of it, is a grant to subsidies, what are the payments or not. And I guess we were looking this up as well when we were preparing for today, and the FT would say that 2/3 of world trade in goods is currently affected by subsidies to local companies. And I think that really puts into the picture of how big an encompassing issue this is, and that level playing field that's been conversed in the Brexit conversations, that conversation that's going on with Trump at the moment. All of these talk about the challenges that are so close to the industry that we represent. And it's not to say there's a right or wrong answer here today. We've heard very passionate insights to both of them, but it is a topic, as were all of the topics that we addressed in the course of today, something that's really, really passionate for us. We in Board B have been looking at some research recently about the future, and the future for our food industry. We were looking at what the next 25 years might bring, because so much of what we're talking about and we've addressed as reference points is the past. But when you're looking at what's ahead of us, I think so much of this is going to be the unknowns. So much of this is going to be the axes of sustainability, the climate, how seriously is it going to be taken, and what is the impact that's going to have. And I think it was described and defined so clearly here today. And I think probably what we haven't touched on a lot today, and perhaps was discussed yesterday, was the role of technology, and where technology and agriculture are going to meet in the future, and where the opportunities and challenges are for us as well. And when we're looking at the next 25 years ahead, clearly there's speed bumps that we're going to face in the next 3, in the next 10, etc., to get us to that 25-year vision. But I think even the team here, I think it was Una, you were talking to us about the future depends on what we do in the present. And that's very much what we have to start looking at as well, as to what do we want our future to look like, because our actions today do define what tomorrow is going to look like. I think when I was reflecting on what the biggest challenges to trade will be in the next short while, clearly, and it's a hot topic obviously in this environment, will be Brexit, but probably more unexpectedly could easily be the coronavirus that we're hearing on the news every single day as well, and what impact that's going to have on trade. Because when we're looking at what's currently being discussed as a health topic, very quickly is going to become a trade. I think when you see Trump tweeting again about the media getting it all wrong and scaring us into the stock exchange falling, then you know there's something about to happen with regard to trade. And we've had our office in China looking at this very carefully and feeding back to us what's actually happening with this virus and how is it affecting trade. And our first initial responses were that it's going to hit us on the ports, because people aren't working in ports in China. But actually more interesting is that they've put on barriers now even for lorry drivers to move from county to county, which that isn't obviously the name in China for it, but from province to province, etc. So that if you want to move from one area in China to another, you have to go into a 14-day quarantine. And as a lorry driver, that's a little bit of a challenge for getting product through. So these are all of the implications that unexpectedly our industry is being hit with, and the resilience, the robustness and the roles of subsidies to protect us on so much of that are key issues that we have to reflect on as well. But I won't stay here rambling because I've warned everybody that I'm going to hit them fairly hard for a question and a reflection very soon. And I've Richard there in my eyes straight away. So I'll open the floor to you, Richard, to make sure that your voice is heard on the day as well.
Thank you, Tara. Couple of observations from what has been discussed. Number one, I want to congratulate both teams on their contributions today and the obvious hard work that they put in terms of preparation of the arguments on both sides of the debate. In terms of the subject matter, a number of very interesting points were brought up. Number one, about budgetary allocation through CAP and the cost of that to European consumers, to support what is essentially a public good and a public service that's performed by those in the agriculture sector for the rest of society. And it's something that has been undervalued, unfortunately, for far too long. But there is absolutely a growing appreciation of that, and that will be amplified in the period ahead, we hope, with the supports changes that are happening in European agriculture through the Green Deal. Again, there was some very interesting points raised. The definitions associated with certain elements of it, and it was good to draw that out. The whole basis of the construction of the motions over the last 2 days has been, by their very nature, to be controversial, to allow great scope for debate. And there was much activity on Twitter over the last 24 hours and on social media generally, picking up on some of the points that were made over the course of the last 24 hours or so. So just want to congratulate everybody and thank all the judges and moderators for their involvement over the last 24 hours.
Thank you, Richard. I just don't know if you wanted to pass it over to your colleague in McDonald's beside you there, that we get a perspective as we're warming up here.
Thank you. So it's Sam now from McDonald's. I think just a broad point, I would say, I went and visited the debate last year in Waterford. It was the first time that I'd been to it, and I was astounded by just the level of debate, discussion, and the level of intellect on show. And I think that the future of the agriculture sector in Ireland, north or south, is in very safe hands with students like you all up there and sat down here too. So I think just it would be a big round of applause for me in terms of just the level of debate, how you've handled it, and the discussion areas. I think we're in safe hands here, and thank you again.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wants to jump in on this conversation before I start names dropping again? Deirdre, you're on. Deirdre is my colleague. She started with Board B on Monday.
Yeah, and what a great first week to listen to the wonderful debates today. So just congratulations from my side as well. It was really fantastic because I'm working in the sustainability and the quality assurance space. But I suppose just listening to all the plethora of topics that were discussed today and the arguments just really reminds me of all the sustainable development goals and how interconnected. So speaking from everything from diversity and inclusion to the economic and social aspects of sustainability. So, I think we can all really agree that there's immense challenges ahead, and I suppose I think one key element I think that really stands out is that partnerships is going to be a really key thing that underpins all these issues that we have. So just a big congratulations from my side, and a call out in terms of the partnerships. Great to see the collaboration and people working here today to kind of address these challenges.
Thank you, Deirdre. Paul, I see you're fascinatedly looking at your shoes there. Do you want to give us a comment?
No, but I've no choice now. I was looking at my shoes, but I was reflecting on something that we were talking about in an earlier session, in fact, about the whole area of, be it flexitarianism, be it veganism, be it vegetarian, whatever, and the amount of traffic or noise that's there at the moment about food and what's good for you and what's not, and why you should be eating something, why you shouldn't. And you mentioned earlier, Tara, about the initiative called FACTS that's underway to kind of, I suppose, identify and get the message out about some clarity in these issues. And I just wonder, from your perspective, so I'm turning it back to you, how do you deal between the so-called facts and the fact that food consumption is very heavily an emotive subject? So do people want to hear the answers, or how do you intend just getting that home?
Thank you. Nice one, Paul. So we launched together with the industry. So it was with the IFA, the ICMSA, Meat Industry Ireland, Dairy Industry Ireland, the National Dairy Council and Board BIA came together because we felt that the animal protein message was being lost, and the positivity and the facts on animal protein were being lost in a huge level of noise that was being created. And we felt that we had a huge responsibility to actually put the facts out, not to demonise people who didn't agree with us, but to put the facts out and to give people a reliable source of information. So Meat and Dairy Facts has now been created as an initiative, and what we're looking to do is create information on 3 platforms: the platform of animal welfare, the platform of nutrition, and of sustainability. Because there's so much new news or fake news or different interpretations of news that people have, we wanted to have a science-based, academic-based, almost contractual viewpoints given so that people had independent, accredited sources of information that they could go to. And this was not, like I said, pumping eat more beef, eat more dairy, but it was, if you want to find out more, this resource is available to you. And we found that the response has been fantastic, because what we did before we started was we did some research as to find what the level the playing field was today. And what we really discovered was people don't know the data. They want to know it, they appreciate knowing about it, their motivation and their viewpoint towards agriculture in Ireland is actually very, very positive. And we've come out with a release even as recently as today, where almost 80% of consumers believe that Irish farmers treat their animals well. But it's a case of, how do you tell them the full story? What proof point can you give them? How do you bring that story to life? Similarly, people don't know about nutrition. They know they should eat well, but what does that actually mean? What's the role of meat in their diet, the role of dairy in their diet? If you're iron deficient, where are the sources to go to that? Ireland apparently is iodine deficient, and dairy is a fantastic source of that. So it's trying to find the sources of information for them. But as Paul was saying there, food is personal. Like, we have a fantastic industry, and one of the things that makes it so fantastic, I believe anyway, is that it's got a purpose. So many of the industries we compete with for talent are purposeless in many instances, but we're feeding the world. So how big a purpose and how noble a purpose can that be? But when you've got that purpose, what we also have to do is to be able to communicate well against that. And food, obviously, is a topic that brings passion out, and it's a very personal choice to people. And people, and I know I do this myself, go to the sources that give them the information they want to find. I know that when I was expecting a baby, I found the book that told you could have a glass of wine. So that's the book I bought. So you go and you find the information that will give you the answer you want, but how do you make sure, though, that there's somebody science speaking to it? I think Deirdre was very open this morning when she said she went to 5 different nutritionists because the first one gave her the wrong answer, she felt, so she went to others to give her the right answer, but they all gave her the same answer. So when you get that scientific fact and trust based in the source of it, I think that's the key piece to it. So are we a trusted source of information? Can we as an industry be relied upon for our consumers to be transparent? And I know very often farmers will challenge Board BIA for auditing, for gathering information, for interfering with their business, but it's that trusted, transparent source of information that is our biggest friend in a crisis, because that's what builds trust. Because if I'm a consumer, I want to know something was checked. I don't want to check it myself, but I want to know somebody who knew what they were talking about checked it. And that's what our industry is at its most powerful, when it works as one, when it creates its proof points, and when it tells its story to the best of its ability. And we have so much of a story to tell, but we have to keep reinventing that story as well. I was talking earlier to people about when we're reinventing ourselves, there's challenges in flexitarianism, there's challenges in what is the right thing to do. We've been looking at these new platforms on how you speak to that story. And one of the platforms that we shared with industry recently is one called Mouth-Watering Transparency. And what we mean by this is, the more a consumer knows about your product, the actual tastier that product can be. And the closest analogy I can give you that might probably be more mature in its thinking is, think of that bottle of wine. So you have 2 bottles, and you're going to think I'm an alcoholic now, if I'm drinking the wine when pregnant, and now I'm going back to the wine again. But anyway, when you look at it, and you have 2 bottles of wine beside each other, And then you hear this one came from a terroir on the side of a mountain on Saint-Emilion, that it was 1994, fabulous sunny year, etc., etc. That wine tastes better already, and you're about to spend €4 extra on it. So what about that for your beef? When you're thinking of that beef on the Mayo coast, with salt air breathed in upon him, eating grass, being looked after by a family, and those 2 kids coming out to talk to him, etc., etc. You know where I'm going here. And that's the mouth-watering transparency that we as an industry have to get even better all the time. But we can only do that when we have the data. Because if you wash the information, if you make it up, if you do the John Hind on it and take a photo and hope it'll all be grand, you're blown out. Because social media can be your friend. And I know, Richard, you mentioned that we've been trending in here and all of the debates are out there. But social media has that voracious appetite for transparency as well. So whatever you say, that mouth-watering transparency, it has to be true. And that's our greatest strength, because we have so much fantastic stories to tell, but it's only when we tell them well and when they are undeniably true that we can win in the market with them. Phelim, welcome.
I was saying, how do I follow that? First of all, I want to commend both sides for an absolutely superb debate, and I will join with the comment about the future of agriculture on this island being a good place with the calibre of these people coming through. And I suppose the points you make there are so well made, and we are probably talking to ourselves in this room. We're all well disposed towards the sector, but I think we can never overlook the challenge that we have to bring that message further afield to the people that are the sceptics. We have to be willing to engage them. And I think, and again, and I'm really going to go left field here, and I'm going to compliment one of our meat factories, the Dawn Group, for putting this debate together, because it does give a platform for advocates for our industry, and that's what we need. And I think everyone, whether we're directly involved in the industry as farmers, in the meat processing side, or in the support agencies like Board BIA, or indeed, dare I say it, the media like ourselves, I think we all have to be advocates for our sector. We are up against it with a lot of adverse publicity, and I think it's by having the people of the calibre that have debated here over the past 2 days going out there to spread that message, not just today, tomorrow, next week, but forever. And I think that's what can sustain our agri. We talk about sustainability. I think that's what can sustain our future in this business.
Fantastic. I fully agree with you, Phelim. Is there any other comments I can invite, either from our panels here, from the audience? I'll keep rambling, guys, now, so fantastic.
Hi, Sarah, Head of Agriculture for Dawn and Dunbeer. I wanted to actually ask a question to the 2 teams, and echo all the comments said about the calibre of the 2 teams, and sitting here for 2 days, all the teams should be commended on the way they presented themselves and the arguments they put across. And I know it's quite tough sometimes arguing against things that you probably don't necessarily always believe in either, so it's a great atmosphere we've all created here. But one of the things that the 2 teams mentioned in terms of this debate was subsidies and innovation. And I think one of the things we are all guilty of saying actually subsidies is a barrier. What do the teams actually really believe in terms of innovation and what subsidies or grants can or cannot do in that area?
Fantastic questions there. Anyone want to take a jump on that one?
Well, I suppose if you look at things even in regard to slurry spreaders, low emission slurry spreaders such as your trailing shoe and your dribble bar, they haven't come into play really within Irish agriculture until it was forced in because they had to, and obviously that will be affected by subsidies coming forward down the line. But we just felt like with innovation, if kind of you're selling this product that's a low emission product within Ireland, we praise ourselves on our low carbon meat and dairy, and that what we found anyway when we were fighting this side of the argument was that if we weren't with subsidies, then this may have happened maybe even sooner, that we'd have more marketing that way, etc. That kind of answered it a little bit.
Any of you here?
Yeah, I suppose that's a very broad question, because when we're talking about subsidies and I suppose the societal value of subsidies to the European consumer, European consumers don't want the likes of GMO technology, they don't want gene editing, they kind of, so as long as subsidies are there and that Europeans are paying in towards these, it'll be very hard to implement them rightly or wrongly depending on the science that's there, because it is very controversial. I suppose in terms of low emission slurry spreading, like again, like that cost to the farmer is quite large, and like your 25 suckler cow man, first of all, probably wouldn't be there without subsidies. Secondly, can't afford that low emission slurry spreading. So it is quite complex. But I mean, I'd be going so far as to say if we didn't have subsidies and if we don't protect our subsidies, like our whole agri-food industry, up to 12% of our national employment is more or less jeopardised. Events like this might even happen if you were to go down the low cost of food production route, and it more or less, in my own opinion, is a race to the bottom, and it needs to be protected, like particularly on the beef side, because the dairy is a commodity that you can sell in abundance that can probably be cost competitive because of we grow grass, but like overall it's so complex. There's so many different angles you can take, and you'd be persuaded by both sides here today. And just thanks for all your contributions and compliments as well to both teams. It was fantastic. So
thanks, Liam. Sorry.
Like the reality is we're probably never going to see a day where it's going to be one or the other. There's always going to be some in between. But what we feel is that like we should be looking at these markets like the world is envious of us of what we're producing, and like should we sell ourselves as the image of the grass-fed beef or milk or whatever we're selling, like, and that it is sustainable. But like we feel that subsidies, yes, they're there to solve a problem, but you can't just boost up producers to make this product if it's not viable on the ground. Like we can see it ourselves, there's no point lying from it. But like that's what our point is, that if you have these subsidies, a lot of people are leaving off it because they can meet these schemes, these grants, and €5,000, like, and here we go. But like that's what we feel, that a lot of it, you'll probably never see a day where it's going to be one or the other. But certainly that we feel that we should be looking at global free trade markets a lot more.
Fantastic. I have another intervention here.
Yeah, congratulations to everybody. I'm looking around this room to see, I think I'm the only politician in the room. But just to say, I think this is very important, because what we've seen with agriculture is we've buried our head in the sand, we've been criticised and lambasted. When I sit in the Joint Directors Committee for Climate Change and Environment, and when the Citizens' Assembly looked at this, the two villains of the piece were agriculture and transportation. But there's a fight back coming from agriculture, especially livestock sector, where dairy and red meat now is not the villains of the piece. There's actually a fantastic opportunity to sell a good news story. I think this debate's critically important. I think there's a few people up on that platform today who no doubt will be on the floor of the Dáil or the Seanad in a few years to come. I've no doubt about that. I think it's interesting because farmers have a tendency, when they get a crisis, when they see light at the end of the tunnel, they tend to build more tunnel. So we need to really manage this situation. We need to get the good message out. The reality is, burying our head in the sand isn't an option. So I think the old adage about if you're not at the table, you're on the table is very true with agriculture. And I think the important thing just to say is there's probably not one silver bullet or one solution to this. But when you take all the elements of this, and the importance, you're right, Tara, your work at Board B has been critical, but the importance for universities is that they need to be there to underpin all these claims. And for government, it's easy to slate your politicians and government for making bad decisions, but to support them, you have to have the science behind that. So the importance of all the academic institutions there, the importance of your own work can't be underestimated, but keep up the good work. It's a fantastic platform to sell the industry and the young people coming into this industry.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Una, sorry.
Just on a really kind of simple way of describing subsidy, to answer your question, with regards market intervention, which that's what a subsidy is, market intervention. Like, on a really kind of simple way of explaining it, my view of it is, as long as there's, I suppose, no one playing the system as such, which I know does exist, but my point is just that the reason that there is intervention within the market is because of usually the environment, especially for the future. I'd imagine the green reform is going to be intervening with the market in order to have change, innovation on the ground level. So with regards to future, like, staying away from the issue of price and stuff, but just with regards our emissions from the agricultural industry, it's very hard to fight for anything other than subsidies to implement innovation and change with regards lowering our agricultural emissions. And I know a lot of it just goes down to just like lowering your inputs and stuff with grass-based systems, but if you were to just take it on that sense, you can see a justification for a lot of subsidies, and I think, you know, that's going to be more valid in the future. Terry, do you mind, just while I have the opportunity before also the results come back, I want to give a big thank you to Roisin and Dohal, our two students on the team who are just not sitting with us right now, but they helped us loads with our research and we're at all our team meetings and helped us immensely. So thanks very much. And then just a shout out to Dr. Karen Keaveney, Irene Rose and Dr. Tomas Russell for helping us throughout everything. And I know WIT are going to do the exact same, and that's fair play and that's perfect. I just want to give the shout out to them. We appreciate everything you've ever done for us and all the support you gave us. We wouldn't be here without you, so thanks so much.
Thank you. Well done. Danielle, I'll give you right a response there.
Well, we wouldn't be sitting here today without our four mentors, Dr. Eleanor Kent, Denise O'Mara, Rachel O'Dowd and Tony Woodcock as well. So, and thanks everybody for the support, and Michael Breen as well, also helped, but he's not here, and everyone else in the background team as well. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Danielle. From an operator's perspective, do you want to give a view? Because the judges are blackguarding us wholesale now at this stage.
Hi. First of all, it's been a fascinating afternoon. The level of intellect and level of debate, it was a bit like tennis. I was looking this way and agreeing, and looking that way and then agreeing, because really there's no right or wrong answer. I have been a McDonald's franchisee now for 30 years. And what I've seen over that period of time is that people have changed dramatically. And, you know, if someone had said to me 30 years ago, you mightn't be selling as much hamburgers, but you could be selling vegan products, and probably you're making more money from coffee than anything else, I'd have gone, your head's cut. But I think that what we all have to do now is, the world's changing, and we have to look at what the markets demand and what people want. And I was thinking about the wine story. I was very lucky to be at a place called Domaine Romani Conti last year with a guy called Aubert de Villaine, who owned a massive farm of 2 hectares and sold his wine at about £8,000 a bottle for the cheapest. But the French wine industry had shrunk 20% because most of the wine farmers were not selling their wine. So there is that, you told it very beautifully, the salty taste
mouth-watering transparency
from Mayo and so forth. But unfortunately, when the average shopper goes to the supermarket, they're looking for the cheapest chicken. And, you know, we've got to be cognizant of that as well. So I think we've got to think about the segmentation of our markets and what we provide the consumer with. And I think there's no right and wrong answer. I mean, I think you spoke to the Australian dairy or beef farmer now who has had to cull his herd because of the fires. They're looking for subsidy. They'll not get back on their feet without subsidy. So it has to be controlled. But yeah, great debate. And I agree with the politician, who is quite unusual and straddles north and south, that if our political teams are in here this afternoon, some great debaters and great orators. Wish you well in the future. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Any other interventions? Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Marion from Business in the Community. And Tara, you mentioned IT and precision agriculture, and it was one of the topics for debate yesterday. And question really on, there's so much happening there in precision agriculture and blockchain technology for traceability. It's been around for a while. And just interesting to hear what is the view in terms of Ireland's leadership position in that area.
I won't claim to be an expert on it, but I'll give an old answer anyway. What we were looking at when we looked at the future of food and took this perspective of what does the next 25 years hold for us, what we were looking to create was scenarios. And because no one has a crystal ball here, and we really do believe it's what we do today is going to position us for the next 25 years. And what we were trying to imagine was, think of an axis, a two-axis graph. One axis says that you're going to have technology. The bottom of it says you're going to have low adoption rates. The top of it says you're going to have high adoption rates. And then go for the cross of it that says the environment is going to be really important, or the environment is going to be as is. And in that creates 4 boxes for you. It says that you're going to have high technology, high environment, high technology, low environment, low technology, you know where I'm going. Anyway, what we were trying to discover was, what does Ireland look like in each of those scenarios, and how well are we prepared for that? So if you have imagine a future where you have very high technology adoption, and what we mean by that is that you have robotics, you have AI, you have big data, you have, as you mentioned, blockchain, you have consumers fearlessly sharing data so that your watch knows everything about you, your fridge knows more, your insurance company gives you your health insurance based on what your watch just told them, etc. So that's the environment. And what then does food look like in that? And how technology is going to play in that. So does that mean that lab beef would be a welcomed initiative in that scenario or not? Then flip it to say, well, consumers actually are going to get more and more protective of their data. They don't want Alexis listening to them all the time. They're going to turn off the phone. They're going to actually say no to the cookies on the websites. They're going to want people to stop looking at them. Again, what does that say to our data sets for it? And it's not to say that one is right or wrong, or one is more likely to happen or less likely to happen, but what we want to build is the resilience of our industry, because we have thought about what we like and don't like about each of those scenarios, and we've prepared for it. Because if you imagine a high-tech, that really welcoming tech play, what does that do to the local shop? What does that do to who we sell our food to? So if we're used to selling it to the local retailers, to the bricks and mortar retailer, and actually everything is now in the future delivered by a drone, or that you actually expect this to deliver to the house, you're not going to Tesco's anymore, who are we selling to? And have we got the pipelines, have we got the contacts, have we got the insight into how Amazon sells, or JD.com in China, etc. So what we're not trying to do is predict that we're going to be better or worse than any of it, but what we do want to do is to ensure that we're having this kind of a conversation with our scientists, with our policymakers, with our industry, so that then they're having that conversation internally as well. And what we would believe then is that Ireland chooses what it'll look like in 2025. So it's already creating the conversation for what will Ireland's food industry look like in 10 years' time through the Foodwise, Agri Vision, etc., 2030 initiatives that they're doing. But it's only by informing those conversations and having the discussion and educating ourselves on the platforms that we can actually prepare best for it. I know that's not quite answering your question, but it's how we're interpreting where we need to go, so that if we have our science, our schools, our academics thinking about 25-year technology, thinking of the skill set our food industry will need in order to be robust and resilient in that world, thinking of our hiring, thinking of the roles that we will play, what we'll be hiring for, do we have people who are really good at technology, who you might normally see going to Google, actually seeing Dawn Meats is the right place to go to, because they're the guys who are needing to dive into that data to make sure that they can provide solutions to what McDonald's in the future will look like. So that's the type of thinking, and they're the kind of conversations and the type of debates that we need to have now if we're going to be surviving in 25 years' time. That's just our view or our perspective on it anyway. Any other, before I go through every bit of research Board Bia has had? Have we another few? Phelim, are you coming back in? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll come back again, Tara, for a question, and maybe it's unfair to direct it solely at you, but if I can start at that point.
Leaving me here on my own is what's unfair, but go on.
You have a big panel on either side of you there. They all debated very well earlier, so maybe you should include them as well. No, I'm just thinking, and listen to what you say there about what we need to do to be competitive, and I don't know if we think about this as an island, indeed, Northern Ireland as well as Republic of Ireland. You know, we are export dependent. We all send 90% of what we produce off our island. And can we be truly competitive in the longer term? And you know, we tell a great story, and the story about Mayo, or if it's the Glens of Antrim, they're fantastic stories and fantastic places. But if you were in Argentina, you see big swathes of prairie land, the Pampas. If you're in Uruguay, you see a system of traceability that's as good as ours. New Zealand, wonderfully natural, year-round growing climate. Can we be truly competitive in that place, or are they always going to have the edge of us in terms of, I suppose, even not just efficiency of production, but indeed image as well, if they properly channel their efforts?
Anybody want to jump in there, guys? I'll come in and fail them at the end then. Go for it.
I'd like to think so. Like New Zealand, as I mentioned there, they're 3% of the world's milk, we're 1%, both largely export-focused countries. We're probably at the stage where we can mind ourselves a bit better than New Zealand did in terms of their resilience starting at home. You know, they've become under a lot of pressure with water quality and environmental issues at home, and like because they irrigate, they've had to cut ditches and trees out. Like we still have that. Like, and I mean, if you go down, I suppose the agri-tourism route, that looks great for us. If you go down carbon sink route, 4% of Ireland's country is hedgerows. Like, so we have these little kind of add-ons that we probably should be able to market as well, but again, like you're creating that kind of echo chamber because it's only people who are kind of interested in the sector will understand that. So trying to sell that to somebody is very, very difficult, and I don't envy Borbia trying to do it. But look, you'd like to think we can, because I mean, if you can't produce food in Ireland, you can't produce it anywhere. Realistically.
Anyone on the other team want to jump in on this? Going. Go for it, Mark.
I agree with what really Owen is saying, like that. I suppose we do have the age, and it's to make sure that we stick with that and we don't go kind of against what we already have, like that. As it is, like we have everyone kind of wants to nearly be like us, so. And I suppose the thing is too that we should be marketing, like a lot of people. And like as Owen said, a lot of people should be educated on where it's coming from. I think that's the biggest problem, that people actually don't realise exactly where their food is coming from. But I think that, I don't know how I'm going to vote now.
The judges are back. I challenge in that I think we have an amazing product, but I think that it has to continue to improve. And that we cannot assume that by doing the same things we do today, we'll compete tomorrow. And I know sometimes I get challenged from many audiences when I come up with stuff like this, but no business can keep doing the same thing and expect to get better money, better returns, etc. We have to keep moving the game. And that's going to stay as the fact of the market. So if McDonald's asks us to do something, if Tesco asks us to do something, they're listening to their consumers. We have to be listening to those consumers and tell our customers what they need to do, and make sure that what they're doing suits what we can do, rather than them coming to us with stuff we can't do. So what I'd suggest, and that's why we spend so much time looking to the future, because that's what's building our resilience and giving us our future proof. So 2 years ago, we had nothing to say. Everyone thinks we can say we're grass-fed because they're eating loads of grass. We have no proof point. Now, on the dairy side, we have a verified proof point of grass. So we're going to have to keep getting new ones to make sure that we're listening to consumers, what's worrying them. Because what I would suggest to us in this era of flexitarianism, what our biggest challenge is to stay relevant. The idea of when I was small and not drinking wine, the whole debate was you had meat and 2 veg, but you'd meet at every dinner. Now you actually have to, our industry has to fight for that to be on that plate. And we have to deserve that right. And what we need to do is to give every consumer we meet on every occasion, every reason to want to put that on that plate. And be it because of the nutrition, be it because they're not guilt-tripped into the fact that it's fabulous for the environment, or whether it's because they know that those animals have been treated really, really well. or it's a mix of all of those things and a nuance of all of those things. But we can't sit in our laurels and wait for anyone to catch up with us. If we want thought leadership, we need to lead. Now, you took ages just for the summary of that one, guys. Anyway, hopefully it was them. It was the girls. Okay, guys, I'm delighted to see you back. Now, we've quite a number of awards to give, and I'm going to, if she's ready, invite Jill Higgins to do a number of the announcements for us as we look through the different speakers and categories that Jill wants to share with you. So, Jill, over to you straight away.
So, hello everyone. Sorry that took us quite a while. We were getting very, 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 very close, so we had to have a little chat. So we got there in the end, though. We're all good. I'm just going to very quickly. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you so much on a personal level to everybody who's helped me and put this together over the last number of weeks. Particularly Michael Hale. I'd like to call him out. He's the events manager for Queen's. Fran Kobos, who works in Dawn with me, and also Emer Delaney as well. So thank you very much. And so I'm going to go through the 6 best speakers, and I'm going to invite some of the judges over the last couple of days to present them. So there's a best speaker for every debate. And then we have 2 spot prizes for the funniest comments of today, so 2 of those, and then Tara will come up and announce the overall winner of the debate. So, first of all, the winner of the Best Speaker Award for Quarterfinal A is Ciara Sweeney from UL. And if she's in the room, I'd like to invite her to come up, and Tony Murphy from AIB to present her with a trophy and a One for All voucher. So there's something with your name on it. Yeah. So while the photos are going on, I'll announce the next one. So we've got from quarterfinal B, Simon Lanigan from UCD, and Aoife Callagher will present the award from AIB. That's great. So quarterfinal C, best speaker was Matthew Thompson from Dundalk Institute of Technology. And that's David Kennedy. Sorry. Sorry. David Kennedy from HSBC will present. So semi-final A, best speaker was Ciara Byers from UCD, and Owen McGuinness will present her with the award. So best speaker, winner of semi-final B was Roisin O'Donnell from Waterford Institute of Technology. And that's Gareth McGee to present the award, please. Thank you. Right, we're okay in traffic. Lovely. And then the best speaker for the final was Martin Bosang. Am I saying that correctly? Martin Bosang. And that's Cathal O'Connor presenting the award. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just wait for the last photo to be taken, and I'll say that. So we've been collecting comments today, and the judges and I had a chat, and we decided that the 2 funniest quips of the day were, one was from UCD, Owen Cashman, who said, "There are 4 guarantees in life. You live, you die, you pay taxes, and a flat roof will always leak." So Owen, I have something here for you myself, so there's a One for All voucher, courtesy of And then the other spot prize goes to Dundalk IT for Aina Reynolds, who said, "Women can do everything that men can do in heels." great. Thank you so much, everybody. I've had such a great couple of days myself. I hope you've all enjoyed it, and I'll hand you back to Tara now for the overall winner. Thanks.
And on a personal note, can I say a fantastic job to Jill for what she has done over the last few days in coordinating all of this and getting us all here as well. Absolutely well done, Jill. Now, can I call on the judges to tell me who won? I don't know. I was here. Okay, fantastic. Okay. Well, I would have thought this, and I can only assume that it took you that long because it was such a hard job to do. But without delaying everybody any further, the winner of this year's Great Agri-Food Debate is UCD. Congratulations. So can I call on Niall maybe to say a few comments, and we'll present the prize to the UCD team as well.
So, congratulations to UCD and congratulations to WIT as well. It was a very hard-fought contest, and you can tell by the length of time that we had to recheck the quotes to make sure that everything added up and it was correct. This is the first time that we've held the Great Agri-Food Debate in Queen's in Belfast. And I'd just like to say a thank you to Nigel and all the team up here that it's been a wonderful event, great venue for dinner last night, and you've set the bar at a very high standard now for all the other colleges and for all the academics in charge of all these wonderful young people that are still here. The competition to hold next year's event is now officially open. And please enter your bids in the next 2 weeks, and we'd like to get it decided fairly early on so we can get to planning, because there's actually a lot of work goes into this event, and there is a lot of planning, and it does take a while to come up with these wonderful topics that we come up with. We try and make them a little bit edgy, a little bit interesting, and I think we've seen from Twitter over the last 2 days that it has created a little spark of excitement out there in maybe an otherwise dull Wednesday and Thursday in February. So from our point of view, we're delighted to be associated with this event, with McDonald's. It's a great event. I think we've seen over the last 2 days some of the future young leaders in industry, whether they decide to stay in agri-food or go on to other, or maybe they go to politics, we just don't know yet. But if any of them are looking for a job, I'm sure that our HR team would be delighted to receive their applications. So thanks everybody for being here, and well done to UCD.